Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and tonight we are joined by a special guest, Don Hooton, president of the Taylor Hooton Foundation. Tonight's topic should be very informative and fun. It strikes a personal chord in my life, having played baseball for 19 years, and we were just chatting all about it, but we're going to hear again, what is the Taylor Hooton Foundation?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah.
I love what you guys are doing, and it's always just great to have a different platform to share your message on. So the Taylor Hooton Foundation was formed in memory of my younger brother, Taylor. If you can think back at some point in your life, somebody has suggested to you to change your physical appearance, right? As athletes, you got to get bigger, stronger, and faster. For some of us, you might need to lose weight, or you'll hear your parents like, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't eat all that food," right? Mm-hmm. Or some parents like, "You need to put some weight on." And these words are powerful, as you know, so they stick with us. And so my brother was a junior in high school, loved playing sports, all different types of activities. He was about 6'1", 6'2", 180, 190 pounds. So already a pretty big kid, right? Again, you're 17 years old. Your body's still developing. And it was suggested to him at that time, if he wanted to make varsity and go on and play college sports, even professional sports, that he needed to get bigger, stronger, and faster in order to do so. Well, at that time, half of the kids on Taylor's team were using anabolic steroids to achieve those goals. So as you know, in a group of your peers, like, okay, this is how they're achieving these goals, I'm going to do it too. So Taylor began buying anabolic steroids at the local YMCA, close to where we were living in Plano at the time, and began using these drugs. So he started experiencing some of the very textbook side effects that I'm sure we'll get into that people are familiar with, from the acne to the rapid weight gain to puffy cheeks and oily skin and all of that fun stuff. But he was also experiencing some of these anger outbursts, as well as some of these depressive episodes. And so my parents had him see multiple doctors. Nobody ever asked about testosterone or if he was on any type of anabolic steroid. And one of the doctors that he was seeing at the time had recommended to him just to quit cold turkey, because he had confided in her that I started experiencing all of this stuff after I began using these anabolic steroids. And so she said, well, just stop taking them all together. Mm-hmm. Well, so now you got to figure you got a 16-year-old young man who has put all this exogenous testosterone in his body. So the brain's saying, man, we've got way too much testosterone. Yeah. So the body's going to suppress natural testosterone production. And when he came off cold turkey, there was no post-cycle therapy that's been talked about, or there's no doctor monitoring this. So Taylor's walking around now with what everybody knows today as low T. Right? So he's struggling from this depression and winds up into depression that was serious enough that he wound up taking his life. And that was July 15th of 2003. Mm-hmm. So we formed the Taylor Hooton Foundation, is named, with a mission to enlighten the world to the truths about all of these things, appearance and performance enhancing substances.
Yeah, and now you guys are partnered with the MLB and traveling the nation and educating kids from, really young ages all the way through up into the professionals who are helping these kids make proper decisions. It's a beautiful thing. When we were talking about your podcast that you're doing, which we'll plug here for you guys for just some more listening pleasures at the end of this conversation, or just anywhere we plug it, we'll talk all about it. And you're getting ready to hop on a plane and go talk to an association about this tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we're lucky to have you here tonight, Don, and to give just, I think, this piece of information, because oftentimes we talk about other substances, addictions, mental health, but very rarely do we have a chance to sit down with someone who understands the body image aspects and why people would be seeking performance enhancing or just body altering substances that could affect their life for good or for finality.
Yeah, and I mean, it all goes back to mental health if you think about it, because everybody that's listening or watching us right now can go back, you can close your eyes and think to that time that an adult, whether it was a parent, loved one, coach, whomever, suggested to you to change your physical appearance.
Yeah.
And, with these words being so powerful, I mean, it's like, okay, here I am, 50, 60, 70 years old. I remember when so-and-so told me that. And we just live in a different world today where there's a lot of information that you have at your fingertips, whether that's good information or bad information. I mean, you can find good and bad information on any topic you want. Yeah. But sadly, I think it's affecting young people and even adults, their mental health, as far as this is what I have to look like in order to fit in or be loved or be accepted into a peer group.
Yeah, it's interesting too how you were describing just the progression for your brother is very similar the way it was presented to me when I was in junior college. Here I was 6'5",
Yeah.
pretty big dude.
Yeah.
And it was still being recommended, hey, if you adjust, you would go pro like that. And it's enticing.
It is.
I was telling my significant other, it was like I had a decision at that point, a crossroads in my life, because that was when information was starting to come out, probably largely because of your foundation, which is funny because here we are talking now. But like that information was coming in towards that like late, like 2008 to 2010 timeframe when it first was offered to me. And I made the decision then and there, I either make it natural or I just don't have it. But my size, whatever, it's like it either happens or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And not everybody is going to sit down and make that decision. They need more time and education.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. I mean, it's, these drugs have a lot of what I would like to call quote unquote positive effects. I mean, my brother put on 30 pounds of muscle within 6 weeks of using it. So, I mean, for a lot of kids or even teens, adults, you start putting on that kind of weight, we get rewarded for it, right? I mean, your squats jump up, your bench press goes up, your 40 time goes down, right? So everybody's, wow, this is really good. So you get a lot of positive reinforcement, and nobody's wanting to have this discussion that there are no shortcuts, right? There's no shortcuts in life. There's no shortcuts in sports. I mean, even in business, you think about it. I mean, people try to take shortcuts and they get in trouble. And it's just really, like we always like to tell parents and stuff, like just be open with your kids, especially when it comes to this topic. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, I don't know anything about it. That's okay. One, I mean, we have a lot of resources to help with that. But the other part is just hear, like if they come to you and they say, hey, I want to, take protein or I want to take creatine, ask them why. I mean, what got that in their head? How can we sit down together and do some more research on some of these supplements? Because those are very safe supplements. But, let's sit down with the family physician as well, and let's discuss some of this stuff versus, you have a lot of parents that'll either put up the brick wall or I don't want to hear about it. And they're not really asking the young person as to, what are you looking to achieve with this?
Yeah. Well, even with protein, I had this teammate when I was in junior college, my sophomore year, and I think and you can add on this one, but I'm pretty sure you would agree with this and you could give us more of the information. Protein is a supplement. It is not a meal, right? And so this guy was drinking it 3 times a day, skipping his meals. By the end of a week of doing that, he couldn't shit.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet his stomach felt real good too.
Yeah. He was lucky that he didn't have to get his stomach pumped.
Yeah.
This is real stuff. It's like, I think there's this part of society, especially with the internet and access to information, that we forget that like a lot of people they're just humans and they're going to make some really bad decisions. And so the education has to be backed up. It's kind of like I was cracking up. I got this gift the other day for somebody. It was a toy, but when it was advertised, right, by some foreign company, it's this big old toy, but it comes and it's like this. And in the US, that's illegal, right?
Yeah.
But I think in the context of what we're talking about with performance enhancing drugs and supplements and things like that, is like we need more regulations on the front and back end of the education around there are maybe benefits, but here's what you're trading.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, especially when you focus on like the protein aspect, everybody thinks, hey, if I just consume a bunch of protein, I'm just going to get jacked. And that's not the case. Protein helps obviously recover, muscles recover. It does help muscles to grow and build muscle and all that. Don't get me wrong. But food first, always, right? So, like if you've got to eat, let's say, 100 grams of protein a day, that's not easy to do. It's easy if you had a shake, but what you're seeing now is a lot of young people, like you even saw when you were in junior college, just 3 protein shakes a day and using that in lieu of food. It's a dietary supplement. In fact, Men's Health just released a documentary called Generation Flex. It's very well done, focused on just high school boys. And one of the kids was just consuming dietary supplements instead of food. He thought that was the right way to do it because, again, that's what he's hearing on social media. Right. He's watching on YouTube, these TikTok videos. It's just there's not enough information out there, right? And, there's no shortcut to it, right? If you want to add muscle and you want to gain weight, you need calories, you need good protein. So, I mean, it's like protein powders are expensive.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can chicken breasts, like peanut butter, like there's lots of high value protein foods that people can eat in lieu of these, right? But again, there's always a necessary means for some of these dietary supplements. Like protein powders are very, very safe, but they're not designed. That's why they're called a dietary supplement, right? They're not designed to be a primary food source.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as an athlete yourself, I mean, how many times is the side effect, the bloating anyway? So it's like,
right?
It's like if you're not even doing it at the right times as well, there's just so much. And, I didn't know any of that either. It's like, when do you take the dietary supplement? You kind of have the pop culture kind of ways that people talk about it. But then when you sit down with people who actually know, you find out that you're in a real gray area with even the safe ones. But the more dangerous ones, which is your guys' mission. And when you go out and talk, let's maybe kind of break it down a little bit and let's go for the big fish first. There's a few we could go for, but why don't we spend a little bit of time talking about anabolic steroids?
Sure.
Because it has such, like you were highlighting, impact on mental health, come downs. There's also, I think, really important things just in my basic knowledge that I'm aware of like, this can cut into your years of life. This can really, really affect you. So where are people getting this stuff? Is it still kind of the main one that people are going after? How often or how early are you seeing people get their hands on this kind of stuff?
That's a good question. So I guess we can start with really the drug itself, right? Anabolic androgenic steroids. You have your anabolic effect, which everybody's very familiar with, right? The effect that's going to cause your muscles to grow and grow rapidly. Right. The androgenic effect will cause people to have more of these like male-like characteristics come on, right? So deepened voice, added body hair, right? Like excess body hair, balding, all these sorts of things will take place. And there's a lot of great uses for these drugs. I mean, they're, obviously they were developed to help people that have low testosterone, that like muscle wasting type diseases, cancer, right? So you take somebody that has again, it's very dangerous, some types of cancer, but you think somebody that's on chemo, somebody becomes very weak, their muscles are deteriorating, or they have some sort of debilitating disease. You can use testosterone in these sorts of, scenarios where it can help them rebuild muscle to fight the disease and live a normal life. But sadly, like any other drug, they're abused, right? So, people are looking to change their physical appearance, right? They're looking to, whether they're cut weight or, add muscle to their body. And it's being widely discussed on social media. So what you're also seeing now, probably more than any time in history, there are more doctors that are studying these types of drugs where, you're seeing low T centers where you can go in and have your testosterone levels checked, but again, testosterone levels are especially in the male body, right, are a reflection of what are we putting in our body, how do we take care of our body through foods. But as we get older, naturally our testosterone levels begin to decline. So there are some people that medically need these types of drugs. But sadly, again, not sadly, the drugs work, but sadly you have a lot of young people now. I mean, I had a question from an 8th grader. At what age did he think was appropriate for him to get on TRT? I had a 13-year-old that had convinced his father to take him to a low T clinic, and his dad went with him to have their testosterone levels checked. And at no point, I mean, again, lack of education, did the father ever say, why are we going to have our testosterone levels checked? 13. Me, I understand, right? But 13? I mean, your body's raging with testosterone, but it's what they're hearing online. So, most of the drugs are being obtained illegally. There's a lot of really good research out on there. In fact, we partnered with the Digital Citizens Alliance, who is a group out of Washington, D.C. They're like an internet watchdog type. But you can order this stuff on any major social media platform, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. You can pay for this stuff over WhatsApp or some of these different cash apps that they have out available today. They'll ship it discreetly to your house. So it's not really so much, and there's crooked doctors out there that are getting it for people, but, we know a lot of the raw materials are coming in from China. They're being mixed with all sorts of various household oils, which can be very dangerous.
I was going to say, there's been a real kind of push in the last, 5, 6, maybe 7 years where they're using like household cleaners and things like this, and people are dying from this stuff.
Because you have no idea what it is you're taking. In fact, I always like to share this story, but it was pre-pandemic, and I remember there was a DEA agent out of Oklahoma that had called, and they had raided this lab, right, somebody's house, like quote unquote lab, right, and they were selling these drugs on over 500 different websites, but Man, he's like, dude, rather than taking a household oil, or even better yet, a pharmaceutical grade oil to cut these powders that they were getting from China, they were actually going out to some of their horses, having the horses urinate in a jar, because horse urine's much thicker than human urine. And you literally had human beings injecting themselves with testosterone that was cut with horse urine.
Yeah.
Right. So again, when you're buying something on the black market, I mean, you go read about these things. I mean, you have no idea what it is you're getting, which is extremely dangerous. But there's some people that are willing to take that risk, sadly, but we need to educate them on it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I was sitting here, I was going to ask you, like, what are some of the compounds and the ways that people are cutting these things illegally, because people respond really well to that kind of information. It's like, think about like, when people talk about the Red Bull energy drinks and, the bull balls and stuff like that. And like, just like random crap that people come up with in their heads, but then they'll never drink it again.
Yeah.
So there are people out there who would hear this and say, oh, horse urine, I'm never using this again. And that's important, whether that's every single one of them or not. It's like, look, drugs are bad, kids.
Yeah.
Like that's the mission is however we got to drive it across, but that is real and that is happening. I was hearing about the horse urine one too. I think the one that scares me is when they're taking the household cleaners.
Yes.
It's like, that's some dangerous,
real dangerous stuff.
The horse urine is dangerous in its own right. It's also just nasty, but like when you're cutting stuff with house cleaners, it's dangerous for the people who are making it and distributing it and using it. It's just bad all the way across the board.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned drugs, because when my brother was using these, so he was 16, and I was playing Division I baseball at the time. I knew a bunch of the guys on my team that were using these types of drugs. And so I had told my parents that my brother was using this. They took him to multiple doctors. In fact, the primary care physician gave him a standard drug test, right? Your $10 drug test, which doesn't detect anabolic steroids, right? Yeah. And so he takes this test and comes back, and of course it's negative. So he tells my parents, I told you I wasn't using drugs. He never saw the steroids that he was using as drugs. Yeah. Because again, there's a lot of positives to it, right? I mean, nobody's talking about them as actual drugs, but that's just, again, just having these open types of discussions. They're alive and well, and young people are getting their hands on them. So it's like, you just really need to understand what you're playing with, because you think the short term, right? Go back to when you're 15, 16, and you conquer the whole world, right? That's just that testosterone running through your body. You don't think about, well, maybe one day I'd like to have a family. Or we talk about some of the real serious side effects. It's a muscle growing drug. It works, right? Like I said, my brother put on 30 pounds of muscle in 6 weeks of using these drugs. But a lot of people aren't thinking about the cardiovascular system, some of the damage that it can do to the heart. Your heart is a muscle. So one of the things that they're looking at, and anybody that's following this stuff on social media, you look at how many social media influencers, bodybuilders have died of heart attacks. Yeah. And what the term is that you can look up, and there's some really interesting pictures on this, is what's called left ventricular hypertrophy, right? So where your left ventricle becomes weak, but it's also clogging up, right? So it's causing the heart to work harder. And this is what's leading to heart attack and stroke. Yeah. Nobody's talking about it. They just disappear. The newest guy, gal comes in line. All right, bada bing, bada boom. Nobody's thinking about you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always interesting the way the internet operates. It's like people are more and more aware now, but it's like, oh yeah, this person who's super fit, super jacked just drops dead. Like you were saying earlier, there are no shortcuts. There are consequences. We talk a lot here of like, you may engage in something, but your actions have consequences. Give it 5 minutes, give it 5 years. The consequence is coming, and it's our ability as human beings to look at ourselves, be honest about our behaviors, that are going to save us from those consequences. So it's like, hey, maybe people are out there using it, and they're making some bad decisions, but they're going down the rabbit hole listening to information like this. They see our discussion. What would you want them to hear that would start to kind of guide them? Like, how does your foundation kind of educate, like, if you are making these bad decisions, what do you need to do? Where do you need to go? How do you need to get better?
So the other thing is, we've heard for years that the don't do drugs story, it just doesn't work. And like every other drug on the planet, young people, whether it's middle school, high school, I mean, you're learning about some of these recreational drugs in health class, fentanyl, cocaine, marijuana. We're talking about these actively. There's all sorts of things. Nobody's talking about the performance enhancing drugs. right? So, but it's just having, educate yourself, know what these drugs are, where are they actually coming from, how do they actually work in the body, because there are medical needs that people actually need these types of drugs. And what a lot of people don't think, especially young boys that are like, I mean, when you have high school kids asking you, like, at what age is good to get on TRT? Are you sick? I mean, is there like, do you have super low testosterone? There's something happening in your life, but what they're seeing, like we were talking about on the social media, they're seeing these almost like God and goddess like bodies. They're seeing, these guys and gals working hard in the gym. They're seeing the muscle development, how jacked these folks are getting, but nobody's talking about the perils, right? We've got to make educated decisions, right? So before you think about any of this type of stuff, know what the drugs are, know where they're coming from, know what some of the side effects are, and just understand at this time, I mean, people don't know what the long-term side effects are of high doses of anabolic androgenic steroids. The reason is because to go and test people at that level, like they do with some other drugs, right? It's against the law. So a doctor can't actually do it. So a lot of it's being done through really good doctors, internal medicine doctors, endocrinologists, talking with guys and gals that are actually using these drugs and seeing what it's doing to their bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just the image of it too, because we see it every day when you open up the social media. It's like the human body does not naturally look those ways. All right. And that's always an important one, because there are people who talk about those aspects, and I know your foundation does, but it's like, look, from a former athlete who worked out 7 days a week, was lifting heavy weights, never ever got anywhere near looking like that, and I was doing things that I'm sure people on those steroids couldn't do.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like we've got to get back to a push of like what is the natural progression and just those flows of life, because I thought you had injected a really good point of you're not thinking at those young ages that you want a family someday, but that's the good stuff in life.
Yeah.
The sports and the performance, that's all great, and it's going to open doors, but your interpersonal relationships, the life that you build with people, that's the good stuff, right? Let's get you there.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't, I was like talking about the cheating aspect, because if you focus on sports just for a minute, there's a lot of athletes that take pride in getting to the peak of whatever sport that they're in, doing it the right way. And you have to think there's a lot of folks that have cheated along the way. Right now, it's a small percentage of them, but I mean, it's robbed athletes of gold medals.
Yeah.
I mean, you think it has robbed athletes of contracts.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll never forget there was a center fielder that played 10, 15 years in the big leagues, played for, I think it was it's either Philadelphia Phillies or Mets or somebody. His name will come to me in a minute, but I remember sitting down with him because it was kind of cool. I watched him play growing up, but we were at a doping conference, and he said, I had a decision to make. I had just turned 30. I've got a young family. I've got a nice income. I'd like that income to continue. So I had to sit down and make a decision at this time. Was I going to use performance enhancing drugs and hopefully compete with some of these 18 and 20-year-olds trying to take my job? Yeah. But he's like, I had to go home and look my kids in the face, and I never wanted to say, Dad, or look at them and say, kids, Dad took a shortcut to stay in the big leagues. I did it the right way. It was my time to retire, let somebody else take the reins. But it was listening to stories like that. But I mean, he could have very easily, hey, let me just hop on some drugs for a couple months. Maybe it'll extend my career. Maybe I can sign one more big contract. And a lot of people don't think about the cheating and how it's robbing others, but also robbing the game.
Yeah.
And just the integrity of the game.
Integrity is right as you were saying it. It's like when someone comes in and they're using drugs, right? Like illicit drugs, which we would put a lot of steroids in that realm. See how interesting the conversation has become pervasive. It's like you and I know that these things are being utilized in illicit, like really illegal ways, but we distinguish it for some reason, right? Like they're different. But let's say like the way society traditionally thinks of illicit drugs, heroin, cocaine, things like that, they're coming into treatment. I'd worked in treatment for years and years. And the objective we're hoping is that you leave with some integrity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That you can stand 10 toes forward and tell the truth. All right, because without that in your life, you're not getting very far, especially like when we're looking at young men.
Yeah.
Right? This is something I can tell as we're discussing is like, as men, we've got to be able to look each other in the eyes. No, we're not taking shortcuts. Here's my truth. Let me hear yours. Let's figure out, right, how we're going to work together. If you don't have that skill and an ability to get along with people because you're cutting corners and screwing people out, you will not, down the road, someone's going to catch you in that back alley. It's coming.
Yes. I mean, you can't, I mean, again, there are no shortcuts. At some point, it's like it all comes to fruition, right? And that's just, I mean, really the whole kind of discussion behind this is just having an open conversation about it, getting people to understand, you know, what these things are and decisions that you're going to have to make. Because I can promise you, out of almost any other drug, again, depending on the lifestyle that you live, and you would think, you know, oh, well, you know, these drugs are being sold in a black alley somewhere, and you know, these are really horrible people that are using these drugs. I mean, the type of people that typically are getting on, you know, PEDs, and they're going to be your top performing athletes. They're going to be really good kids. Like, my brother was almost a straight A student. You know, he was so top of his class. He was a really good athlete, good looking kid, had a lot of friends. So it wasn't like he was looking to hide or escape. He was just looking to better himself, change his physique. And it's like, we've got to kind of, you know, have sort of a shift of a thought process of this, right? Where it's not just your top performing athletes. I mean, we're talking about, you know, high school girls, high school males, middle school kids that are looking to do this stuff strictly to change the way they look and feel about themselves.
Yeah. And that's really the driving point is like, there's a thread that exists when you just try to look at an addictive process. Right. There, you think of the bum on the street. It's like, well, that didn't work even for the development of AA, right? Because you had the CEO who was drinking like a fish. Right. So we have to shift the perspective away from there's one type of person who does this, that we are affected by these early messages, and social media has been a real culprit. A lot of really good parents out there trying their best, but
it's hard.
Yeah, you see it firsthand. It's like they latch onto this stuff like it's crack cocaine. And they are ready and rearing to go with whatever these influencers are saying. You know?
And what's interesting is we're learning about a lot of this stuff from the kids. I mean, obviously the drugs are out there, but it's like we listen to what the kids are saying. So about a year ago, I was right here in Dallas. I'd finished up a program with some 8th graders. We talked to some 9th grade students before talking to the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And following the 8th grade program, 2 or 3 kids came up afterwards. They're like, hey, man, what do you think about tren, like short for trenbolone? It's not approved for use in humans. It's, you know, it's a veterinary type drug for cattle to help them, you know, become hungry, grow muscle, and all that stuff. And but very, very powerful anabolic steroid. And I'm like, we hear it's safe. What are you talking about? So they started showing me, you know, on TikTok and YouTube, like these guys they're following openly talking about it. And then we started to have more high school kids that were asking about it. Like, hey, I hear tren's safe. And I'm like, you guys can't possibly be talking about trenbolone, right? So that's where we use our podcast, where it's like, okay, I mean, if we're having questions about whether like the most powerful anabolic steroid on the planet is safe or not, we need to be doing a better job of education. But the problem is, you know, we're a very small organization with a little voice, you know, just a little squeaky wheel, you know, trying to get this message out where you have, you know, some of these guys and gals that are on social media will put out a message. They could put it out right now as we're sitting here. By the time we wrap up and get to our cars, we've got 300,000 or 400,000 views. Right? It would take us years to get to that, right? And so that's sort of the thing. It is the messages that they're getting online, but it's also how do we counteract that through just having these types of discussions, especially with things, you know, like trenbolone. So that's why, like on our podcast, we believe, okay, well, like let's bring on a doctor, somebody that can tell us what these drugs are, why these drugs were designed, and then let's bring on somebody that's actually used these types of drugs and how it affected them. And I mean, there's not many people I've ever talked to that have said, hey, man, I've been on trenbolone before, and it was the best drug I've ever taken. Everybody will tell you how horrible it was and the misery they went through while they were, you know, on a cycle of this stuff.
It's like you said, it's not made for us.
You
know, and some of those people end up looking like those cattle. I mean, they get huge, which is, you know, look, fine. for your views and clicks and likes, whatever. I'm not here to personally. First of all, I don't want to be the target of them getting pissed hearing me say some shit about them. I don't want them showing up angry at my doorstep.
Yeah.
I know that. I'm a big dude. Hey, it's cool, man.
Yeah.
Do you, boo
Yeah.
boo. But the kids, man, this is why we
Yes.
need the regulations, or else the smaller voices that are making impact, they don't get heard in the proper channels, right? Without the regulations, because these people are popular. These things are popular. There is a very insidious part of the internet. We talk about it often here with conversations on mental health, is that the flip side information that is completely the wrong path to follow as far as taking care of your mental health will be what goes viral, while the most astute clinicians who are talking about what you could do to actively take care of yourself will never go viral. And that's any industry, no matter what. There's no need to cry about it or whatever. We make sure our voice is heard, because the consequences that are going to smack that person into reality, right? It's like you'll hear anybody in any pain talk about the gift of desperation. It's coming. It's coming. And steroids brings it like nobody's business, because a lot of people are high performing athletes, and then those consequences hit, and it's on a stage that's like, well, we could not have reached you before you were ready to fall.
And that's why we're super thankful for our partnership with Major League Baseball. We came alongside baseball in 2005 following the congressional hearings, so they've given us a platform to deliver education programs in all 30 major league parks. They've given us a platform in schools. We actually had a 3-year relationship with Alex Rodriguez. So if you remember, what's interesting about what we call our All Me League, which is how we sort of developed, our All Me Assembly programs, which is a registered trademark of ours. So when Alex was implicated the first time for performance-enhancing drugs, if you went to Google right now and you did Don Hooton, A-Rod, you'll see a picture of my father and Alex shaking hands in Tampa under, well, the tent's no longer there, but it's spring training, under the tent, like doing this big press conference. So for a couple of years, Alex was making very generous donations to the foundation. We were using those dollars to go out and deliver education programs, of which some, imagine like we'd go into a Boys and Girls Club or a high school, and we'd do like a 45-minute presentation, but then Alex would come in as a special guest and talk to the kids. So the kids would go bananas. And then, as you know, he gets tied up in the whole biogenesis scandal. And we said, you know what? We don't want to become the organization where these performance-enhancing drug users come to rehab their image. Because we know, right, the majority of athletes out there are doing it the right way. But it's sad because they're not being recognized, right? Like nobody, let's say you have a guy that goes on a home run tear. Well, he's got to be on the juice, right? He's got to be using steroids, where, what we want to be able to do is highlight some of these athletes. So what we did was we formed the All Me League, and I'll never forget it. At one of the years at winter meetings, I believe it was 2015, we were sitting with Major League Baseball, said we want a representative from all 30 teams to voluntarily step forward to be part of this All Me League, to send a positive message to kids, right? To talk about like, hey, I can do and make it to this level, whatever you do in life, without the use of drugs. And so I remember thinking, like, I think they told us if, we got a couple guys would be real successful. And by spring training, the end of that year, we had 13 players. And today we've got players from all 30 Major League Baseball teams. Some of them have multiple players, right? And these are some of the biggest names in baseball, where Getty Images donating their images. Major League Baseball actually puts some of these print PSAs that we've developed with these super cool action photos of them with real positive messaging, in the programs for like the league championship series, the World Series, the All-Star game. So we're just trying to make a positive impact to these kids, because again, you're getting a lot of noise from the PED users, right? A lot of noise, but there's so many more athletes out there, even in the fitness industry, that are doing things the right way. And it's like, those are the folks we need to recognize. Those are the voices that really need to be heard.
And they're doing the things that the kids watching actually want to do. Right? It's like the professional athletes and things like that. That's what kids actually want to do. No, there's this, someone was sharing, I heard in a podcast the other day, it's like no kid wants to actually be a social media influencer, because if they get there and are successful with it, they'll realize like how mundane a lot of it really is. I mean, as cool as some of the stuff is, like when you were walking in, we were looking at some of the equipment, it's like there's the work behind it and the things that you and I choose to do, and they'll see that as well. where it's like, when we highlight somebody doing it the right way in pro sports, it's like, yeah, that's what we all dreamed
Yeah.
of, and that still is real.
Yeah. And it's hard work. I mean, it's, I've never met a professional, especially one that's been, whether it's the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, that has been there for a long period of time, that doesn't watch everything they put in their body.
Oh, yeah.
The majority of them don't drink alcohol. They don't put sodas in their body, right? They're eating good foods. And, especially if you think baseball, right? If you've got a 7 o'clock game, guys are getting to the ball field 1, 2, 3 o'clock. They're getting in a workout, right? They're eating. Some of them taking a nap, getting in there stretching just to prepare for that game. And then some of them, even have, post-game care. So it's a long day. But it's also like social media, like you said. I mean, you're seeing the final product, right? Like if you go sit and watch a Rangers game, you're seeing the final product.
Yeah.
You're not seeing the hours of blood, sweat, and tears that have been put into that, like on social media. I mean, they've got hours and hours and hours of video that has to go through to make them look the way they do at the end, and make it where you want to click and spend 10 or 15 minutes watching it. Right. So it's like, sure, there's a lot of ways to generate income on that, but it's not like they're just filming content and putting it out there. I mean, there's work that goes into it.
Yeah. I think we would probably agree maybe there'd be better use for their time as those types of creators, but they're going to do it. And so we have the conversations here because for all intents and purposes, we love everybody on this show as a human being. And the reality is, of those influencers that are using harmful substances, we love you too. And we would hope you hear this information that the Taylor Hooton Foundation is sharing, because there's just, I think, a better way to live, a more peaceful way to live. And that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that maybe we've made some mistakes. There's a path forward, even if the world is your oyster. The interesting lesson that has been slapped in my face in life, and I watch slap the faces of my clients, is that even if you think the world is your oyster, if you're making terrible decisions, you have to lay your head on the pillow at the end of the night. Be real honest with yourself, because there's always consequences that come with, you get to travel around the world and make all that money, but nobody wants to spend any time around you because you're roid raging. Right. But see, the people watching that don't see that part.
You don't see. It's like social media, right? You never see if a family's struggling or somebody's struggling, because they're only posting the happy times, right? You're only seeing essentially the highlight reel, where somebody might be struggling with depression or struggling with addiction or some of these different types of drug use. You're just seeing the positive aspects. Oh, so life must be great. But if you know them on a personal level and you get to meet these people, like, hey, they struggle just like you and I. They put their pants on the same way. Now their checking account might look a little bit different, right? But we're all God's people, right? So we're all built differently, like, which makes the world interesting, right? But
Yeah, which I think is another solid point on why there's no need for performance-enhancing drugs for anything outside of, it's like the conversation with marijuana. Sure, if there's a medical necessity for it, right? No one's going to come and kick down your door. Fine, right? If there's a medical necessity for some type of anabolic steroid, fine, right? We all heard Don share the scenarios, right? So it's like, when it starts to be abused and misused and uneducated, like the doctor who just didn't have the information and gave your brother the wrong information. It's like, these are the things we want to tweak. We're not trying to come into anybody's personal life and tell you what to do with your life. That's on you.
Nobody's judging you.
Right. There's just nothing but open arms over here. And I think people see that. There's a push now more on social media where I think people are seeing the emptiness, the vapid void on that side. I just hope to see, as that pendulum swings back, that it then doesn't just go in this, like you were saying. I thought it was really good to put there's no judgment, right? Because the pendulum could swing to that side where now we're condemning people. And there's this middle ground where it's like, hey, we all make mistakes. Let's just educate ourselves.
It's not our job to condemn anybody, right? I mean, it's our job to help provide information, provide support, right? I mean, no matter what type of drug it is. But it's like, it's just, again, making educated decisions, just having an open discussion. Because, there's a lot of people out there that have tried these drugs, that have used it, that are interested in using this. And again, there's tons of it. There's tons of information out there. But it's like, how do we make sure that if you use any type of drug, or you're deciding that, or it's been a pressure to you, you're making an educated decision. So going in these are all the things that could potentially happen to me,
Yeah.
you know, that I might not be thinking about, you know, especially as it relates to these drugs and this not being a topic that's covered in schools.
Right.
They're just seeing all the positive stuff online, right? So you're seeing all the positive effects of these types of drugs. Nobody's out there saying, hey, you know, went into cardiac arrest, or I had a stroke, or, you know, I battled with some of these other side effects.
Yeah.
That's not being discussed.
Right.
And so if you're not talking about in school, I mean, really, we're one of the only private organizations out there focused on educating young people and adult influencers about these types of drugs, so we can go home and have conversations about it.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about like what are other major organizations who address substances, the first one comes up from our childhood, which is DARE.
Oh yeah,
Right,
yeah.
and they don't address steroids.
No.
Right, which is it's interesting, right? It's kind of like this, you know. It's, I always like to imagine it's like you got a table full of drugs and it's everywhere, and you're taking some of them and kind of wiping it. It's like, why do we do that? You know, but people do that. And so the clarity is real helpful. You know, I feel like even, you know, someone who works with, I work with 12 steppers and people who are seeking recovery. It's helpful for me because I've sat in treatment centers back when that was where I was working at the time. And I had this guy, he was a third baseman, you know, prospect. I think it was a Padres organization. He had come to us with severe mental health issues, and while he was in the center, he was getting steroids. And I had to sit down and have the conversation with him of like, where are you getting this? And it's not allowed here.
Yeah.
And then I had to go and convince the owner of that treatment center that, hey, I told him it's not allowed here.
Yeah.
It's not anywhere in our paperwork, but I need support on this because this isn't good for you, you know?
And for some reason, and I think this is kind of turning as, you know, our younger generations come up, but, you know, things like mental health issues have always been taboo, right? Performance enhancing drugs always been taboo. Like I used the example earlier. You know, you have somebody that has a bunch of highlights, right? They do a bunch of great stuff. The first thing people think about, they've got to be using performance enhancing drugs, right? So, but I think some of that stuff is changing where you have a lot of these athletes, they want more testing, right? They want more education. Now at that level, they have a lot of access to medical information where our high school kids don't, right? They don't have access to what some of our professional athletes do. So, which is why it's great that, again, more people are talking about it. The more we talk about it, the more information flows, right? So it's just that one kid that might hear that message that was right on the edge of making that decision. Says, you know what? Maybe I'm just going to do this thing the right way. I'm going to, you know, just eat food, you know, eat my stuff. I'm going to work real hard, and whatever comes, you know, comes if it comes of it.
Yeah.
You know, and looking back, like, hey, I'm glad I never used those types of drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and for someone who played for 19 years, and I'm sure you would second this, you know, if you're young listening to this, sports isn't everything.
No.
Man. It's a great door opener. It's a wonderful experience. It's even more wonderful having done it naturally.
Yeah.
You know, but there's so much more to life after those young years playing sports. You know, if you're going to go pro, right, then I'm sure you'll have a blast doing those things. But the vast percentage of people, even if you do it, you're not going pro.
Yeah.
Right. It's like
such a small percentage.
Yeah. If we just talk about MLB, it's like what, 750 active players in the MLB at any given time.
Think about how many kids play Little League, you know, Select League, all that. I mean, it's millions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's there's a whole life out here without those things. Nobody is really walking around thinking about how you look anyway.
Yeah.
You know, if you're on the side of the body image stuff. We had a therapist on a couple of weeks ago talking about the mental health side of body image in small children. And we had kind of talked about that aspect as well. As like, you're the only one thinking of that image, right?
Yeah.
And you were touching on it earlier of like how pervasive it is when it gets pushed in there at a young age, where then it was somebody else's. They gave it to you, and now it's become your narrative and your image.
And you just think it's normal, and that's kind of what's going on. It's like, that's what we try to tell parents. You got to be real careful, right, when you tell a kid to get bigger, stronger, and faster today. When we were growing up, I mean, the internet was just coming around, right? But you tell a kid to get bigger, stronger, faster, I mean, they can jump on AI, or they can, you know, like you just start Google, like, how do I gain muscle? How do I gain weight? Next thing you know, you're down a rabbit hole getting all sorts of information, some of it good, some of it bad. Like, there's a lot of really good influencers out there that they're definitely on gear, steroids, right? They're definitely on performance enhancing drugs, but they have a lot of good information, proper nutrition, great diet. I mean, they're in the gym working hard, all those sorts of things. That's good information, good takeaways. It's just the sad part is, our kids aren't stupid, right? They know, especially you're 40, 50-year-old man and you're extremely ripped, with all this extra muscle, like that didn't just come from working out, depending on obviously the physique, right? But
Yeah, and those especially on men, those crunched up veins. It's like these things aren't natural. Which, hey, look, it's fine. If that's how you think you want to look, but make sure that that's actually your genuine thought and not for somebody else. I think that's a big cornerstone, right? And I'm curious if you would agree with seeing as many kids as you do, is like, just slow down and make sure that it's your decision. This isn't some outside influence. This isn't some way that you think other people will accept you like you.
Yeah. I mean, we just live in a world where, everything it's like, I've got to get from point A to point B just as fast as possible. Yeah. That's how I'm going to be accepted. That's how people are going to love me. That's how I'm going to make it to the next level in sport. And it's really, really hard. I know I was at that age one time, but to step back and see the whole perspective.
Yeah, it's important because that perspective is going to come into view quicker than you think, and it's hard waiting for it, but you'll get there. You know? And plus, like we were talking about with the hard work earlier, it's always a great experience when you've put in that hard work, you've done it the proper way, and got the reward that was afforded to you.
Yeah. And you'll look back, and it's always hard to, it's kind of like the dad advice, right? You kind of look back like, man, I'm glad I did it that way. Now, it was hard to see perspective at that time. Like I still tease my dad today. It's like, man, some of the things I wish I would have listened to you. You were trying to help me out. I thought you were stupid. I knew better, right? And then if I would have just listened, I would have been able to learn from you at that time because you've had those experiences. But sadly, I mean, without failing, we can't get better, right?
Yeah. So you're getting ready to go and speak to, what was the association you're speaking at?
So tomorrow morning, I've got a flight out of Dallas heading to Denver. We're going to be speaking to the Colorado Athletic Trainers Association. So it's their annual meeting. We have about 45 to 50 minutes to present. So, athletic trainers from around the state of Colorado, they're likely going to be offered CEUs, but we're able to give them a perspective of kind of what's going on in some of these schools. What are the kids talking about? What are some of these substances that they're using? What are some of the things they can look for? And what's great about athletic trainers, I mean, especially being in sport around some of these student athletes, they're getting tons of questions as it is.
Yeah. I
They're seeing
ours, at both the colleges I played for, they were definitely fielding those questions.
Oh, yeah.
From those teammates who were on it.
Yeah. And now more so than ever, because, I mean, you have all these different supplements and pre-workouts and SARMs and peptides and everything else, that runs the gamut. I mean, they're just getting bombarded with all these questions. Like, whoa, what just happened to food?
Yeah.
Right? What just happened to eating and training? But, again, that's the world we live in. So it's just, working with organizations like that just to, again, keep the discussion going.
Yeah. We really have morphed into a society that's just trying to shove a bunch of different things into our mouth hole, aren't we?
Yeah, and it's like, good and bad, right? Yeah. So it's like there's no magic pill, right? There's no magic pill out there that's going to make you the next athlete, or that's going to, I mean, if you're taking a pill that's going to add 30 pounds of muscle, there's probably something in it. It's impossible, right, for the human body to put on that type of weight that rapidly. But there's probably something illicit within that pill or substance. Yeah.
So all kinds of things to look out for. And for the adults listening too, it's like, man, we got to look out for these kids. Yeah. It is on us.
Yeah.
The same way that the generations prior took care of us, we've got to carry that torch.
Yeah. And it's just asking them questions, that, especially on a topic like this, mental health, that sort of thing. I mean, they're really engaged and interested in it. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many schools we left where, whether it's law enforcement or the, that's present, or because some of these inner city schools you go into, we'll have SROs and all that sort of stuff, or the principals or leaders at the school. Like, how did you keep the kids' attention that long? I said, I'd like to say that we have a great program, which we do, or we have really good speakers, which we do, but at the end of the day, they're talking about this. Yeah. Nobody else is talking about it with them. It's a super popular topic. So of course they're going to be engaged.
Yeah, it's all over social media.
Oh, yeah.
Spoken or unspoken, like when we were joking before about the term natty or not.
Right.
This is all over the apps and everything.
I mean, you go into YouTube, there's a lot of influencers that are, they'll go through the gym. Are you natty or not, right? So that's the big discussion. Yeah. So
Yeah, and you guys are having it, and I caught it earlier when you were talking about the All Me with MLB.
Yep.
That's what you call your podcast as well,
Yep.
isn't it?
So yeah, so we've essentially used All Me, just being, I am who I am. It's just what God gave me, right? I'm performance enhancing, drug free. I'm drug free. So we have our All Me assembly programs and our All Me podcast, which essentially what we're using our podcast for is a resource, right? A tool. So, for instance, when we talked about Trenbolone, we had all these kids asking about it. It's like, okay, we need to go out and find experts, those that understand the drugs, those that have used the drugs, and let's interview them. So when kids have questions, you only have 45 minutes with them, right? And you got to cover a lot of topics. So it allows parents, kids, those that are seeing the program or that want to learn more, to go out to the podcast and they can dive a little bit deeper into that specific topic.
Yeah, and they find that on the website, the main website, Taylor Hooton Foundation.
Yeah, so we have taylorhooton.org, our main website, but just like everybody else, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify. We've now started, thanks to AI and some of these really cool softwares that are available today. I mean, we're doing videos like this. This is great because I think more people, as you're working out, you can watch stuff on your phone, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually see the guests that are talking.
Awesome. Perfect. So that's the All Me podcast. You can find it by going to the website at Taylor Hooton Foundation. Is it .com or .org?
It'd be taylorhooton.org. Just Google Taylor Hooton. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's how when we were talking about it initially, I found it. I went through the website and found
Okay,
it. So
cool.
You can find it that way. You can also search it straight up on Spotify. We tested that as well. So
Great.
You can find the All Me podcast. And if you want to get involved and donate to the Taylor Hooton Foundation, do they just go straight to the website?
Yeah, go straight to our website. You can do a one-time donation, donations, over a month or, over a year, however you'd like to do it. And all of those get put towards our education programs.
Awesome.
So that allows us to get into even more schools and see more young people and adult influencers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll make sure when we put this further out on YouTube that we have those links available
thank you.
as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question I ask all the new guests.
Yeah.
If we were going to build a mental health amusement park and you got to build a ride there, what would it be called? What would it do? What color would it be?
That's a really good question. For some reason, a roller coaster comes to mind. Just because I think, in life's a roller coaster, right? You have ups, you have downs. Some's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it makes you sick. All those sorts of things. I don't know. I for whatever reason, it comes to mind. Life would be the name of the roller coaster, right? It would be epic, though. I mean, it would be super fast. It would be the biggest that it would have to be built in Texas, right? Because we do everything big here first, right? But I think I don't know why those stick out to me, but.
Would it be a wooden roller coaster or a
metal? Steel. Definitely steel.
Yeah. What color?
Red.
Red. Okay.
I don't know why, but
yeah, we'll take it. Yeah. Cool. While we have a captive audience, any last words you would share with those who enjoyed the message tonight?
No, I just appreciate everybody tuning in, listening to this discussion. Appreciate what you guys are doing. Mental health is a huge piece of this.
Yeah.
And it's something I think our younger generation is more open to talking about. Obviously, I lost my younger brother to suicide, so it's important to us, our family, the Taylor Hooton Foundation, that young people know, they are loved. I mean, even adults, we're all loved. And it's just, we just need to work together, right? Yeah. And just understand that you never know what somebody's going through that day. So it's, just treat everything with compassion, with love, and I think if we could do that, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I imagine this isn't the last time we'll have you on here. If you guys like this, we'll get Don back on. Yeah. We'll maybe bring some of your team, some others that you've interviewed, and we can just kind of keep this conversation rolling.
Yeah, I would love that.
Not just around the substances, but around the mental health and around the education you guys are providing.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming
on.
No,
thank you for having me. This is great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we break the cycle here every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We will see you next week. We love you.